to get to that. Okay, let's get into another part. I want to talk about the different symptoms and the traits of boundaries, personal boundaries. You have porous boundaries, you have rigid boundaries, and you have healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries, let's talk about it. Share personal information, but you share your personal information, we talked about earlier, in an appropriate fashion, in an appropriate way. You don't overshare and you don't undershare, because there's some situations where you need to share your stuff. Maybe you're applying to a job. You have to give your social security number. I know for every agency that I've worked at as a mental health professional, I have to give my social security number. They have to do a background criminal check. So that's an appropriate place where you have to share your personal information. There's other spaces where you don't need to give them none of that, that information. So just know where you are with that. Valuing your own opinions, that is healthy boundaries. Valuing other people's opinions, that's healthy boundaries. Knows personal wants and needs and can communicate them. I kind of went over that already. You able to communicate that. The biggest one that I learned early in life, but it took me some time, is knowing when to say no. Now, before I get into that, accepting other people's no. Because like I said, I talk a lot about internal emotional things we deal with because a lot of us do and don't know it. If you have a problem accepting people's no, and you always internalize it as if there's something wrong with you, they're picking on you, they don't like you, they're rejecting you, something is wrong that you need to check emotionally. Why you always go there when someone tells you no? Maybe that person told you no because they respect their time. And so they're letting you know, I can't do that now. No, I'm not going to be able to go. And don't sit there and analyze it and internalize and go, wow, I wonder why they told me no. Is it something I did? Maybe something I said. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. They're respecting their time. They got something to do. That's it. They don't dislike you. There's no hidden agenda. So those are emotional stuff. If that's you and you deal with that, you need to check that, because it's like as long as you live in this world, you're going to hear the word no. And I tell it to children. I told it to my own daughter. I tell it to children I work with. You're not going to hear yes all the time. The world doesn't work that way. You have to know how to cope with the word no. Now, we know little children don't like it because they like to have their way and they still learning how to understand. Their brain is not at a stage where they can reason certain things sometimes, depending on where they are. So you tell them no, it's like they catch a tantrum. They want their way. They throw themselves on the floor. Now, you see adults doing that. You're like, what? You want to have a session? Maybe we need to have a counseling session. But anyway, so those accepting other people's no and not compromising your own values. It's unhealthy to always compromise your own values and standards for other people. Don't do that. Then you devalue your own self. So porous boundaries, that was healthy boundaries. Porous boundaries, when we talked about in the healthy boundaries, and when you don't undershare, overshare, in porous boundaries, you do that. You're under and oversharing personal information that you don't need to do that. Porous boundary I had to learn for me learning to say no. Because I always been like extra nice and I always cared about other people. But the problem was when I was much, much younger as a child and a teenager, sometimes I cared more about others than I did myself. So what am I doing? I'm devaluing myself. I'm belittling my own self. I don't need anybody to do it for me because I'm doing it myself. Because maybe underneath emotionally, there's a feeling of insecurity or maybe low self-worth or some kind of esteem issue. So, I had to look at that like, why am I doing that? Why am I always letting somebody else have their way or say what they want to say? And I kind of like diminish and belittle my own self or devalue my own self. Why am I doing that? And then learning to say, no, I can't do that. It's okay. The other part to that is after I learned to say no, and it was okay to say no, I had to learn to not feel guilty and bad that I said no. Oh my God. So, that's two steps. It's like learning to say no, but then being okay with it. Like, okay, I said no and that's it. Not go home and think like, oh my God, I hope they're going to receive what I said. I hope that don't push them away. If somebody really cares for you and they have their stuff together and they don't have any hung ups in those areas, they're still your friend. And it's how you say stuff. No, I'm not going to be able to do that, or no. You don't have to be rigid or aggressive and go, no. And that means there's something else going on there. Maybe you anger the person. They're always asking you to do stuff. And again, we talked about it earlier because you never communicated earlier to that person why you don't want to do certain things or why you don't want to go to a certain place. They're looking at you like, what's wrong with you? Why you got attitude? Because you built that stuff up and you never said that. So that becomes your problem, not the other person's problem. You treat other people how to treat you. So that's part of that too. Learning to say no and be okay with it. Not being overly involved in other people's relationships. That's porous boundaries. It's poor. You're overly involved. But what happens to you too in that? You don't respect yourself in that too, because now their problem become your problem, and now you're worried about this stuff more than you should be. Don't do that neither. Sometimes we do things when we fear that other people are not going to receive us, or they're going to reject us because we don't always go with their flow, dance to their beat, comply with their demands and their requests. And so sometimes a poor boundary line is when you continue to comply or go along with the flow because you're scared that you're going to lose their relationship. That's unhealthy. You don't need to be in a relationship like that. If you're in a relationship like that, you either delete it or you need to do some kind of work. That's poor and porous boundaries. Rigid boundaries. You avoid any type of intimacy with people, maybe. Because of something that happened. You have a trust issue, you have a rejection issue, whatever, you have a guard up. And so now you're just really rigid. You seem cold to people. You seem isolated. Maybe you have antisocial symptoms because of whatever. And so you can't build healthy relationships when you're rigid in your boundaries. There's no sharing at all. It's like, that's okay. You just shut yourself off. But you cut off your own blessings when you do that because you don't open yourself up to receive. You may be blocking someone who wants to bless you, someone who's a gift to you in your life. You have no idea. So you think you may be protecting yourself and cutting people out because maybe you've been hurt before and you're like, that's it. I'm cutting this off. I'm not going to allow people to get this close to me. You need to heal in that area because then you close off the right relationship that you need to be in. Friends. It could be your future husband or wife. You just don't know. So work on that area if that's you. You being in that same mode, sometimes you don't ask other people for help and you really need it, but maybe you have pride or shame or guilt, whatever it is. And so you just like, that's okay, I'm good. And you are hurting. Or you have a lack and look, we help each other in this world. Nobody's living on their own by themselves on an island and they don't have any interaction with people. When you go to the store, you're going to interact with the person, the sales clerk. You're going to have interaction and you're going to be making a transaction. You need to pay for your stuff. You need to give your money to that person so they can give you. I mean, come on, we live in a world basically. So you're going to have to interact on some level, so you don't want to be detached from people because that's unhealthy for you. And you can't if you have a desire to build any kind of relationship, you have to work on these areas. So you can avoid people altogether. And then you wonder why maybe you're unhappy. So I just wanted you to look at a few of those things. I'm really finished now. So that was the whole self-care, personal boundaries, the different type of traits of personal boundaries, like what they look like and what type of personal boundaries there are. I really hope this was helpful to somebody. This is good to help you in your parenting relationships, romantic relationships with your spouse, friends, cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, co-workers, every place You have interaction with other people, especially on a constant basis. You need to put some of these things into practice. And this was helpful to me. It's like, I need to do better in this area, But anyway, you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful evening, wonderful morning, whatever time of the day it is for you. And until we meet again, be blessed.